Monica, are we ready to go live on the platforms? Things off. Okay, she texts me yes. All right. So I think we should be live on all the platforms now. Just want to say thank you guys for joining us. We're going to go ahead and kick things off. I am Joyce Johnson, author, speaker, sales champion coach, and founder of Y Sales Network. Thank you for joining us tonight, our audience, for Let's Talk About It, hashtag college life. We're talking about virtual learning. I'm going to go ahead and ask the audience that if you're not talking, to mute your phone so that we won't, after we get a little feedback from someone, so that they're able to hear everyone talk. So again, I am Joyce Johnson, author, speaker, sales champion coach, and founder of Y Sales Network. This is Let's Talk About It, hashtag college life, virtual learning. I'm going to go ahead and have my audience introduce themselves to you. Tonight we have everyone that, not everyone, but a lot of people that participate in the college process. We have our students, we have our professors, and we actually have a parent on here to talk about the virtual learning process and impact from the parent. So why don't we start with Mommy Bear? Jessica, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, I'm hoping that you can hear me okay.
We
Are
can.
you
Yeah.
able to hear me without a box? Okay, good. So I have a 25-year-old daughter who's currently attending UT Arlington. She's finishing up her degree. It's a combination degree of it's biochem and physics. So she'll be graduating this December. So she did go onto the online platform over the summer semester and the end of the spring semester in March when the COVID restrictions started. She is attending some online and some in-person classes this last semester.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Looking forward to hear from the parents. And I've talked to some other parents too, so I have some additional insight about how some of the parents are adapting well to virtual learning and others are not adopting so well. So Justin, introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. It's great to meet everyone on the panel. My name is Justin Paul. I'm a longtime veteran educator teaching media arts and the music industry. Actually just wrapped up the summer semester teaching in the UCLA music industry program on Zoom. And I'm also a record producer, DJ, and music executive.
Oh, we should have had you start us off with some music.
I know. It's funny. I usually start my classes off with music. Even if I'm teaching a film course or a music business course, we play music through Zoom.
Oh, that's awesome.
And in real life, too. It makes it more fun that way.
That definitely, I can imagine that. Now that's getting creative, Justin. I would, you'd be like my favorite professor. And yeah, introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ina Grossmith. I am a recent graduate of Boston University, graduated in May 2020. I was studying journalism, public relations, and women and gender studies. And my experience in terms of COVID affecting my academic career is that it struck right around spring break, meaning the latter half of my final semester in college was kind of ripped out from underneath me by a global pandemic. So that'll definitely be a story for the grandkids, but I'm excited to be here and thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, she said a story for the grandkids. This is going to be interesting. DJ, introduce yourself to our audience.
Okay. Hi, how you doing? My name is Denario Edgar. I'm a sophomore at Prairie View A&M University. I'm a computer science major, and I also play men's basketball here. Um, so far, I can say that COVID has definitely had its effect on our campus, as going to a HBCU has definitely made a social and cultural experience. Does make it a bit impersonal, so everybody's a bit holed up in their rooms, trying to be safe and social distance. As far as the season, it does raise a bit of uncertainty as far as exactly how things go and what exact protocols will be in place. So it is a major adjustment, but I still think that it's a fairly new opportunity to try out some new learning platforms. And definitely, as she said, will be a story for those that come after us.
I'm sure. I'm sure. I can't imagine because I'll let Samantha introduce herself, but it's going to build resilience for you guys. Just think of that. You get through this, you can do it all. Samantha.
I'm Samantha. I'm a junior at the University of Texas at Austin. I study public relations and I'm getting a minor in entrepreneurship. Um, so basically, like everyone else, I went into virtual learning right after spring break. And I would say that it's been difficult, not necessarily my classes, but sort of the student organizations that I'm part of. I'm part of a public relations firm that we run on campus. And so a lot of our work was very collaborative with weekly team meetings and strategy sessions. So it's been kind of hard to sort of build campaigns for our clients. So that's been difficult to navigate and sort of trying to have a virtual firm. So, yeah.
Sorry about that, you guys. That was my own coming into my personal Facebook page. But so I've heard you guys talk about, one seems like the everything started changing around spring break time, right? So you got one person trying to graduate, one person getting ready to start school, the other one's in the midst of things, and there just been a lot of changes. So I want to start with Jessica because I know she has to leave us a little early. But as a parent, I've heard from my friends that have college students that one, they were just uncertain if the kids were going back to school or not. Then they were, once they were going back to school, what was the tuition and fees really going to be versus what they weren't. And then my favorite that when I'm talking to college students about the sales profession, the importance of graduating with a job, because you go home, you're not going to have a room, so you're going to be on the couch. The room is now, a man cave. It's a it's a sewing room. It's anything but your bedroom. So you have to have a plan when you graduate. So I've heard some of all these different stories from my friends that have college students in school right now. So Jessica, what has the impact been on your family?
Well, I'll say this. My daughter was waiting tables, and due to COVID, the restaurant industry got hit pretty hard, as you can understand. So financially, it went from her being able to pay a large portion of her personal bills to now we're having to send monthly stipends to her. It also affected her, with being in a science degree, there's a lot of laboratory stuff with that, which is very difficult to do in a distance learning environment. So I felt, and she felt, as though she was missing out on a lot of those labs because the virtual experience with laboratory is not the same. There's just no equivalent. And we moved last year, and so we didn't even have a room for her, but she'll be moving in January. So for us, she's, I'm a CEO and founder of several businesses, so she'll be able to help us, but she won't be able to find a job with her degree right now because due again to COVID, a lot of companies have done a freeze on their hiring. Orientation programs have been cut to save money on a lot of these companies. So that's kind of how it's affected us and affected her so far that we're aware of. The other thing was just kind of not knowing. In the summer, she was debating on, okay, I don't have a job. I need to save some money. It really would be great if I can continue the online at this point because she could have moved home at that time. And a couple weeks before, then they decided for sure going to do in classes. So she had to scramble, find somewhere to live because she didn't re-sign with the school housing. And so it was a little difficult for her.
Well, I can't imagine. So I've heard you say once she's a science major, she had to alter how her learning and her labs are going to be. I love the fact that mommy said we now have to provide a stipend. Normally, that's something you receive on. You kind of earn it, a stipend or something when you're in a program, but now parents are having to send them, kudos to her for being independent all this time, right? But now, like a lot of people have lost their jobs and things, she also lost her income that she was having to help put her through school. So if you can imagine how many other college students have been impacted that way as well. So that's a big
Definitely.
adjustment for you, a big adjustment. And just awesome that she can actually go home and you guys have a job for her because you have businesses. Now, I will say to you, there are companies that are still hiring. There are companies that are also hiring virtually. There's companies that kept their virtual internships, and many of them were paid internships. So I wouldn't totally give up on that, not being able to find a job, because that has been happening. And I think at this point now, maybe they didn't have it figured out before, but as I speak to a lot of different colleges and universities, they are now, a lot of different companies, they are now figuring it out, and they are able to hire. They're interviewing people virtually. They're onboarding virtually. They're providing their training virtually. I do think that that whole virtual process of moving into an employer format and moving into the workplace is going to be a challenge for our college babies, as I call you guys. But there are opportunities out there. So I don't want you to think that there are not opportunities. I believe that there are opportunities now, especially in that science field, to go into different pharmaceutical companies, and medical supply, medical device. Those people still, they're moving forward. Justin, would you agree? Have you heard that from your student body about your students that are graduating? What's been the challenge for you as a professor, coaching those students and preparing them for graduation?
Well, there's a lot of different challenges. A lot of my students are international. And so when the COVID lockdown came, a lot of them weren't even sure if they would be able to stay in the country. So there's a lot of moving parts to my students. I'd say 50% of them are international. A lot of international students come to Los Angeles and come to UCLA to study. The music industry and the live entertainment sector has been one of the hardest hit from COVID. So we've had a lot of challenges with people getting internships at record labels or production companies. My fiance is an actress, Ina, so I totally hear what you're saying about not having opportunities there. So I think that a lot of my students are definitely having to pivot and, do what they can to learn new skills. I think in the music industry in general, I share with my students that it's really the tech business. So I've been encouraging them to make the best of this time and to learn new skills, to learn video editing, to learn web coding, to learn more about graphic design. Try to just embrace the moment and use the time that you would have, to do it. But, once again, the music and live entertainment industry is one of the hardest hit right now. So unfortunately, there hasn't been a ton of opportunities for them, but I keep encouraging them to keep learning, to keep embracing new technology platforms.
You said everything when you said a lot of that is technology now. If you think about how they've started releasing movies now, and the movies are now on these other platforms, and the music, the artists are just releasing their music and finding ways to get contracts, and maybe they're not earning as much money, but a lot of it has been done through technology, if you think about it, right? The music is being released over these huge platforms, whereas maybe, they were done a little different before. So, and then I want to address that you talk about your international students, because I've noticed one of the colleges said that they are having a challenge with homeless students now. Yeah. Because, so if you think about those international students, don't know if they can get home, or if they're going to have to go home or stay, maybe not have a job to support and pay their financials. And there's a lot of students that don't go home for the Christmas break. They're there on campus. And so now those students are homeless, and a lot of students rely on the meal plan at the college. So this virtual space just has, for as many opportunities, I do like to stick with some of the opportunities that have opened up as well, but there has created a lot of challenges that is just a ripple effect, and I don't think some of them, Justin, that we're getting to until now. Yeah.
I know for myself as an educator, I've been concerned about my students' well-being, their mental health in this state. Once again, a lot of my international students are here kind of in Los Angeles alone. And if any of you have ever visited LA, it's massive. Los Angeles County is like 500 square miles. So I know for myself, I've done what I can to make myself more available with more virtual office hours, to try to even help find people places to live if I can. But clearly that comes with challenges with COVID and people not being in the same pod. But overall, I do feel that some of my international students might have, more disposable income or come from families that have a little more abundance than other families. My students that don't come from very abundant families are the ones that I'm probably the most concerned about, because they don't necessarily have the resources for that great laptop, for the ring light, for the great microphones, and just other things that they might need to enhance their learning experience overall.
Right. Wow. I'm learning so much already, and that's why we have this, and that's why I always say let's talk about it. And before I used to do one-on-one with students for these calls, but COVID has required me to put some thought into things and pivot and create more of a panel format and go a little bit longer on the program, because there's just a lot more to talk about and a lot more people being impacted. So let's move over a little bit and talk to the students. And I like for you guys to share, for one, I know, Deniro, you are at an HBCU, Purdue University, my model where I graduated from as well. Cheese. And so the great thing, you mentioned being in LA, Justin, that's why I want to start with him, because the great thing about Purdue is it's such a college town. If you guys are familiar with college towns, and everything's really based around the university, and those students coming back really impact the economy there locally a lot, and what's taking place. And so to hear him say, well, we're in our rooms and we're social distancing, and a lot of things around historical Black colleges are, as Deniro said, about the social impact and that support you get. So is this your freshman year, Deniro?
No, this is my sophomore.
It's your sophomore year. Okay. So kind of give us a snapshot of maybe some of the things that when you got there last year that made college life really exciting, that's missing this year in this virtual space.
As I kind of mentioned earlier, it was much more of, if I was to say, college experience last year. Being a freshman on campus, everything was a bit new. It's kind of a shocking experience to come in and see such a variety of faces. It's a lot of familiar faces. In such an enclosed space, you really get to kind of be around the campus experience. There's fraternities walking around on campus, there's sororities, there's activities, events, everything. We're in class, we actually get to see our professors, see our classmates. Definitely a more personalized learning, and just all around the experience as far as how campus was set up. And that's kind of been a bit reduced greatly this year due to COVID. Everything is online. We're at an age now where we can roll over, press a couple buttons, and be in class. There aren't a lot of events going on due to the social distancing. So it definitely kind of is a culture shock within another culture shock. I think being here was a culture shock for a lot of people, and then to have that just immediately kind of taken away in such a quick way was, I think, another culture shock, and that kind of took a lot of people by surprise. So now everybody else is being forced to adapt. We're being forced to learn how to be productive at home. We're being forced to use different programs to connect with our friends and with our peers, with our professors. We're being used to, and as you said, it's developing some of those skills that otherwise would have went untapped just by being in this kind of cocoon-like space, but it kind of gives everybody a place to blossom. So it does have its pros and its cons about the entire situation, but that I would definitely say is a major difference from last year.
Yeah, I definitely think you guys are good, as I said before, to be the generation of resiliency and being able to really just know how to pivot and bounce things off. And, I really feel like that you guys are getting the best lessons ever right now. And I'm sure the positive for you is being able to roll over and within a couple of clicks be in class. And the negative part of it was that's the best part of it.
Oh, most definitely.
And then as a student athlete, like I said, I know I watched you play sports when you were younger and in basketball. So I know we have the NBA wrapping up right now. Do you feel like you're in a bubble?
Um, Unfortunately, I feel like I have created my own personal bubble within everybody else's. I seem to take it a bit more serious than those around me. So I think college life is a bit seeing as though, well, honestly, I feel like the way people behave has a lot to do with the way the media portrays it. I feel like at the beginning of like March and April, there was definitely a lot more serious connotation around COVID, and they were more so broadcasting the unfortunate deaths that happened as a result. And now it seems that the only thing that people hear about on the news, or of course Gen Z, we get our information off Twitter. So the only thing we're hearing on Twitter is more people catching it, less people, not necessarily less people dying from it, just less people that we hear about dying from it. So I know how that affects mass groups of people. They think that, you know, oh, well, maybe it's okay if we do certain things. Maybe some people are starting to have social groups, social events. So I'm definitely being, me personally, I'm being a bit more disciplined than those around me. So it isn't exactly like a bubble experience, but as far as being on the team, there are definitely a lot more protocols in place, and definitely is a difference from last year, and being just simple things, being able to just walk into the gym. We're not able to do that. We have
Right.
to set up appointments. We have to get scanned. We have to get cleared before a lot of things. Wear masks, of course. There's an infinite number of things. Which, so yeah, it definitely. I wouldn't say it's exactly like a bubble, but I would say that I sort of have become a little personal bubble in my
Personal
mind.
bubble. You know, and I appreciate the fact that Purview is going those extra steps to where you do have to get tested and things before going into the gym. I certainly appreciate that, because one of the things, and I'm going to have Samantha and Inyar speak to this, is that um, some of the colleges are doing a better job than others. And I think a pet peeve for mine has been when colleges want to send students home after they have been exposed to COVID. And I think that, personally for me, I believe that the colleges should have a plan to keep the students there at that point. Why send them back into the community? Why send them back to their parents? So that's my thought on that. So I like for you ladies to kind of chime in and talk about what your colleges are doing. And if you had to rate them on a scale to 0 to 5, and 5 being the best handling COVID, I want you to rate them for me. Samantha, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. So I guess it's kind of like a trick question because I think universities are doing the best that they can with what they were dealt with. I mean, I don't think anyone really knows like what to do or like how to ensure that like large groups of people are going to be safe because at the same time like we can't control like all these groups of people like Greek life organizations, like it's just too hard, and so I think my university is doing the best that they can. Our university brings in a lot of tourists because it's in downtown and it's a prominent university. People want to go and check it out. So previously, before people could enter the buildings, and now you need a student ID to go inside. So random people can't go in, and so that's kind of protecting the students in that sense of not excessive amount of germs. There is like an app that you have to check in, the Protect Texas app. So before you go in, you have to have the clear, like a green tab on the app to ensure that you're okay to come to campus. A lot of the classes, they are hybrid, but the professors are being pretty lenient where you're not forced to go in person if that's not something you're comfortable with. I think that they've adjusted pretty well to the virtual learning. I mean, it's not the best thing. I mean, it's hard, especially I have a innovation class, so we have to like do things with our like workspace or like draw and design things, and it's hard because a lot of the work is supposed to be interactive. Like you're supposed to be talking to people or, gauging their behaviors, but it's so hard to do that through Zoom. And so I think that UT at least is doing the best that they can. So I probably would rate them. I mean, I don't know, maybe like I'm like biased because I really love my university. So probably like a 4,
You know, I can imagine that you are biased because you love your, no, I'm joking. So my brother and sister-in-law both graduated from UT Austin. And I mean, their kids have the, and I always say in Austin, you can't even have a kid's birthday party. If you plan your kid's birthday party around a Texas game, no one's going to show up with their kid. The birthday parties and everything is planned around the schedule of the university. So when you talk about Big Texas and how we do things in Texas, but kudos for them. But I know a lot of that is school pride for you guys. So Inya, tell us a little bit more about your experience.
Yeah, so unfortunately, being an alum, my perspective on what Boston University is currently doing is a little bit limited. But that being said, I still have a lot of friends who go to BU, and I was and still am involved in a lot of initiatives surrounding equity for students of color, and am in touch with faculty and whatnot. So I've got some insight as to what's going on, and I think looking at it from the outside in has been quite a bit interesting. But as for when COVID first hit and I was still living on campus, at that time, I probably would have given BU like a 4, because similar to what Samantha was saying, it was such a new landscape to be navigating. New information was changing the situation on a day-to-day basis. And I knew that, I think, almost as good as anybody, not only because I was a resident assistant on campus, so I was kind of in charge to some degree of presiding over the safety of some residents to a certain extent, but I was also a journalism student forced to report on the updates of COVID like every week. And it's funny that you mentioned the music industry, Justin, because I did like a story about how that was one of the hardest hit industries, but I digress. Point being, COVID was constantly on my mind, and I definitely had to be consistently on top of what was happening. And that said, kind of looking at it from multiple perspectives, I think BU did the best that they could. I appreciated that they didn't kick campus
I think you froze for a minute. So,
I don't know if you guys can hear me. I think I might be having some connection issues.
We were able to hear you. We can hear you now, but you did freeze for a minute. And I just have my first in this whole virtual experience, a different experience. I had to move to the side and break a sneeze. So I've never had that. But, I'm in Houston, Texas, and our weather right now, our air quality right now is very bad. So anyone that suffers from allergies, we're just pretty much miserable. As you guys saw, I have my cup here where I was having my green tea because I drink my green tea every morning. It helps me with allergies. So we got some more for this call. So I just had to like kind of dive over to try to break a sneeze. So, hey, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in this virtual space. But, thank you guys for sharing so openly and honest about your schools and experience that you're having. And Justin, I want to go back to you as the professor because, I also teach at the community college level, and we want to take care of the kids, and almost I heard you say like you were trying to help people find apartments. So it sounds like you're not only having your hat as the educator now, but you're also having your hat like as a counselor now with your students.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's such a fine line because clearly I'm not properly trained in mental health or counseling, but
Yeah.
I have a lot of empathy, for my students, and but yeah, I'm clearly doing what I can to help people because that's why I do this. That's why I teach, is to help people, with their lives and their dreams and their career goals. And I do want to say, I didn't mention earlier, even though I am in Los Angeles, I actually went to college at Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia. So I'm very used to that small college town life. That's what I grew up in. And, clearly I feel it's such a gift now that I get to live in Los Angeles and teach and share my experiences. And I kind of have that unique hybrid of coming from the smaller town to the big city. But one of the things that I was going to share with students and parents today is that, you know, you want to get up, and I like the fact that he said he just, you know, DJ rolls out of bed and goes into class, but I still feel like you want to get up, you want to get that shower, you want to try to dress nice, you want to try to act and pretend, you know, as much as you can that you're actually going into class, and try to have some type of normalcy to your life, you know, so that you feel more powerful. I know that, you know, even today when me putting on a jacket and a nicer shirt, it makes me feel better instead of just rolling in front of the camera. So I know that not everybody has that time, but I would say that since we don't have to commute or walk to class now, that we, you know, can still take that time to do what we can to get prepared. And another thing that I do regardless of COVID is I know that we have syllabuses, right? A syllabus for me is just a guide. I know that we have goals and we have outcomes, but I think that we kind of really need to get to know our students and find out what their personality types are. Some students are very extroverted. Some students are introverted. Hence some people have their cameras on, some people have their cameras off. So I always encourage everyone to turn on their camera, to engage, to participate, do what you can to try to find a quiet place, you know, that you can be, you know, have good lighting, try to have a background that's not as distracting. And, you know, clearly if you're like, Ina, and you want to be an actor, well, now is your chance to try to be in front of the camera, to try to project, to be heard, to, you know, have good lighting, to have a good background, and, you know, all the above. But yeah, I mean, a lot of teachers are really put into challenging places of students sharing a lot of things that you know, at some point you do have to maybe make some calls to some of the school counselors and tap into other resources, you know, to help them as well.
You know, I like what you said about, you know, getting up, and if you're not don't have to go to class, at least be engaged in a class, right? So it's always a pet peeve of mine when someone doesn't get on the call, on the video, right? And when I'm doing virtual speaking engagements for colleges, I'm always telling them, look, your students have to be on, right? And when I see their little names on the screen that's not on, I'm going to call them out, because I think it's important to get engaged, right? To be able to have that momentum and that commitment to the process, although you're not in class. And just to, I think it helps you just to be more aware and provide that support system for your peers.
Absolutely.
So if you don't have to get up and go across campus, least you can do is, you know, put a shirt on and some lipstick on or something, and engage in the conversation.
Sure. I mean, just wearing maybe your favorite shirt or your favorite new jacket might make you feel better. You know, it's just part of our persona and who we are. And I know it's challenging for my introverted students. I mean, I don't know if some of you have taken the Myers-Briggs or maybe the 16 personalities, but I try to go out of my way to even share with my students the 16 personalities link and ask them to share that with me, so that I can kind of wrap my head around where everybody's coming from. Because even in normal times, students have different ways that they learn. You know, it's not everybody's going to learn the same way. So we have we have to do what we can as educators. We can't, unfortunately, I have very large classes. I think last semester I had 38 students in one of my courses. So I can't completely tailor the course, but I do think it's important, especially in a time of COVID, that we go that extra mile to learn more about what's going on with our students and how they might perceive information and how their mind works, their emotional mental state. I think is a very important process of helping them learn better.
Yeah, and kudos to you for doing that, Justin, because I think that's the person that I love personality assessments. And being in a sales the sales profession in corporate, there's always personality assessments for us and things of that nature. But I've also recommended in the past, I've had my interns take personality assessments and share them with me so that I can figure out where they belong on the team and what their strengths are. And then also I have them share it with their parents and have them share it with their girlfriends and boyfriends, because I think it's important that people know these little quirky things about you, that sometimes, people see you one way and they think that this is who you are, right? So I think if someone sees De Niro as a student athlete, they're like, Oh, he's a basketball player. He's outgoing. Athletes normally have that leadership and influence role, that sort of that big man on campus, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that's who he is. So by you as a professor going that extra mile, getting to help your students understand who they are and how they can use that to their ability to communicate themselves better and to win in the university and the workplace space, I kudos to you. I just think that's amazing. And
Thank
you're
you.
going over and beyond, because I don't know too many college professors that have said that.
Well, I've been doing this for a long time. I mean, I've been fortunate to teach. I started out teaching in Philadelphia and quickly realized that, a lot of my students were coming from various backgrounds. And I think in the beginning, most educators might take it personal if a student's not paying attention. But, we learned from even the Malcolm Gladwell book, it might have been the tipping point when he was talking about what they learned from creating Sesame Street, that just because a student is not staring right at you and making eye contact with you, that doesn't mean that they're learning. And I know that some educators can take that personal. They might feel that
Yes.
the student is tuning out, but they still are receiving the information. And I think it's just, once again, it's just important to try to understand how your audience is learning and how to package the information for them, and to be able to adapt your lesson plan and your syllabus on the fly. I think that a
Yeah.
lot of colleges are kind of stuck in their old ways of doing things, and the pandemic is shaking it up, and hopefully in a more positive way.
Yes. Samantha, I think your profile says something about relocating to Austin with 2 dogs in tow. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You know,
So it's kind of funny. So I classify myself as an untraditional college student. So I transferred to UT from a local community college where I'm from, El Paso, and it's kind of rare to get accepted to UT from a community college. So it's kind of a big deal. But I'm a little older than like the traditional college student. I'm 25. So when I graduated high school, I moved to LA. And so I lived in LA for many years, and I got a lot of my PR experience from LA. And I decided that I wanted to go to school. And so I went back home to El Paso. I lived there. I went to the community college, and then I transferred to UT. And so I officially moved to Austin this year, actually. So this was my first, this semester where this whole COVID thing started was my first actual semester like on campus.
wow.
So it's crazy.
So I'm going to get to why I asked that question. It's because someone talked about mental health, and I know that sometimes with having animals and things, and I think they've said that now more students are or who live in apartments on campus are going home and bringing their childhood pets to school with them to help them as part of their coping mechanism. And so, but I just have to choke her really fast, Justin. Did you hear her say that that she's 25, so she's an older college student, but she lived in LA for many years? I mean, it sounded like it was like 10 or 15 years she lived in LA, right? That's why I love talking to college students. You guys are my favorite people in the world. But Samantha, I saw someone said something on here about mental health, and how has having your pets with you helped you with that transition?
It's been really nice. I mean, I love my dogs. I have 2 dogs. I have a pug, and then I have he's a Maltese Terrier, and I actually got him in LA from a rescue. And so it's just been really nice because you're working at your desk, and like my dog will come and like put its face like on my leg to pay attention to her. And so it's just kind of nice to have that little distraction of like where you're like stuck on a computer for hours, and then this like little creature like wants your attention, and it's really nice, because like they have no idea, like they just want your attention, like, or she'll bring her toy to me and I'm just like like I'll just throw it, I'm like, okay, go, and then like she'll come back and bring it again, and I'm like, God, like what a time to be alive, like I'm trying to write an essay or I'm on class and my dog wants to play, or like on another note, it's funny because professors like also have their pets. And so like
Right.
you can hear dogs like barking during class and I'm like, "Oh my God, like it's just a wild time, you know?"
Right. As everyone's in and out on the podcast, because when you're in this virtual space, you have we have fails and internet and things like that. And so, but I heard I asked you about that because another college student has said to me that she just didn't know how she would be coping in school if she didn't have her pet with her.
Yeah.
And that her that her dog was helping to kind of break up things when she felt too serious, or even if she felt sad or a little closed in, you know. So I want to go ahead and answer some of the things, questions from the audience, or respond to some of the comments. So for our college students, someone asked, how are you mentally preparing for your day and for, I guess, college life in this virtual experience? So, I mean, are any of you doing anything where you're like, okay, I'm going to have this ritual. I'm going to get up every day like me, get up every day. I drink my green tea. I have my emergency, I'm trying to stretch and things like that. Anything you guys are have implemented to help you in this space? Denaro, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. For me personally, being an athlete and being a computer science major, it's being an engineering department in general, it's very hard to establish a routine because life is always changing every day. There's always something new. But I do think that mentally a good coping mechanism for people like me who sometimes can struggle with, um, I guess, being organized all the way like to the point to where you can be ahead rather than just be excelling in the class or in the course or in whatever I'll be doing. But in order to stay organized and stay on top of and ahead of the game, I think that it's definitely good to have some sort of agenda, a planner, or I personally use a whiteboard, and you put it on your wall. And every night I can go in and write in the things that I have planned to do or plan to accomplish for the next day. That way, even though things change so quickly, it's pretty easy to just, you know, erase, get something new on there. Always keep things updated in my phone that I have to do, meetings I have to be on. Um, because I feel like the main thing now is to not get complacent and not use this time to be I guess be lazy or to allow it to hinder your growth. I feel like now is the best time to allow those other qualities that you have to flourish and to tap into some extra talents and extra areas of yourself that you otherwise would not have noticed. So I definitely feel like it's a balancing act as far as being able to um, cope and as far as being able to stay on top of everything. But as life is always changing, it is a bit difficult to set a solid routine. But I genuinely feel as though certain things, go without saying. I personally get
Right.
up. Um, I have a certain time that I will go work out, certain times that I would have my classes, and then I dedicate an extra couple of hours just for doing work and getting assignments done. And then definitely allow some break times in there so that you can, you feel cooped up in a room.
Kind of
You step
refresh.
outside, get some fresh air. Well, some semi-fresh air, so you would have your mask on, but some fresher air.
Fresher
Um,
air.
but yeah, but
Yeah. Well,
that's
I just
definitely
love what you said there because and I saw Justin Naughton as the professor Naughton his head. Someone's typing and I can hear the typing. I can hear Justin see Justin Norton his head because you said some great things. I am an advocate of putting together your to-do list the night before. So not only you're doing the to-do list, you're writing it out. That's one way of retaining and learning information. You have a visual because you have it on a board, which is another great way for students to be able to have those visuals and be able to see and learn and retain information. and you're taking that time to take breaks and get some fresh air, and get ahead a little bit in your schoolwork. So I think that and you may have to change that up on some days. Some days you may do a little bit more than of step one than step two. But I think having that to-do list and having understanding what you need to accomplish, if you don't get everything done that same day, just mark it off, leave that one on the board for the next day. But I mean, what are you thinking, Justin? Because I saw you like, yes, I love.
Well, I mean, routine is just so important for success in general, but we also have to adapt. But yeah, I'm a big believer in exercise, getting out in nature as much as you can. Going. It's hard to work out, I believe, with a mask on. I know some people are able to do it, but I prefer to, especially if I'm in direct sunlight and it's really hot out. I want to be in a space that I'm far away from people and can exercise. But having a routine, I'm a big believer in meditation and doing what you can to keep a structured life, as much as possible during these strange times. That's what the calendars are for. Our phones are like pocket computers. They really shouldn't even be called phones anymore. They're
They
like
are.
personal pocket
Yes.
computers. And with our Google Drive apps, or whatever your favorite apps are, your favorite calendar, there's definitely a lot of tools out there to keep you on track. But clearly, if you're feeling any certain way and you didn't get enough sleep, you definitely want to honor yourself and feel that too. But yeah, it's really important to keep that routine.
Yeah. Samantha, what are you doing to help with your routine? What is your routine?
So I usually set the alarm for 7, and so I'll get up probably like around 7:38, make the bed, and then I usually exercise every day. So that's the first thing I always do. So I just put on my workout clothes and I go and I run depending on like what I guess I have a running app, and so I'm training for the half marathon for next year. So I have to like continuously run like every day. So depends on like what I'm running. And then yeah, I come back, I shower, and basically the next like few hours I'm just sitting at my desk. So if it's Tuesday and Thursday, I'm on classes up until like 6. And then on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I'm doing like my like freelancing stuff and school stuff. So yeah, that's mainly my routine. But every day I wake up roughly around the same time and I exercise. So, yeah.
I think that's great, getting that exercise in and just getting your energy going and, getting, your mindset in a better space too. I think it's great. And I'm like, Justin, I don't like to be outside walking with my mask in my neighborhood. I was going, walking sometimes and when I see people, I just kind of move over, to the other side, and wave, and they move over to their side and wave. And so, but I do think it's good to get some fresh air, even if it's just, sometimes I go and just sit on my balcony and, for a few, or I just step outside. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Another thought I wanted to add on routine. I know, especially here in Los Angeles, where we spend so much time in our cars, I've been able to take that time, whether it was an hour and a half to 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours a day, depending on where I have to go, and making sure I allocate that time to something that I've always wanted to do. So I think that's one of the benefits of COVID, is we don't necessarily have to commute right now or as much. So I think that that's something that we can work into our routine as well. I know that I've gotten probably 15 hours a week back that I can now allocate to writing more music or more exercise or reading that book that I've always wanted to read to add into my routine.
For sure. And I finished up listening to an audio book today. So I think also audiobooks, I'm an author, so I love touching books, and I have a lot of books. I have books all over my house and things, but I've gotten into the space because I spend so much time on the computer, it's beginning to bother my eyes, is that I've downloaded some books and I find myself, listening to books, over music or something of that nature. So I think that's good as well. And yeah, so I believe you were in graduation mode when all this happened. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, that was my
Yeah.
situation. I was just about to.
Because someone mentioned here on one of our things, they said, do you feel you missed out on an experience that you're not able to recreate? And I think if there's an experience that you cannot recreate, it's missing your graduation, and
Yeah,
if I had a graduation hat here, just pretend I have one and, in your honor, um, for something virtual. But how did that make you feel? I mean, had there been a buildup for your graduation, and then what did you end up doing? How did you celebrate?
yeah, that was a huge adjustment in and of itself. I think for one, I was just grateful that, I had a roof over my head, a means of taking care of myself, because I mentioned it earlier before my connection cut out, but I was a resident assistant on campus. So thankfully, I was able to stay on campus. I had, my apartment and my kitchen and all of that. And as much as it was really sad to not be able to celebrate the end of my 4-year career at BU with all of my friends, I was just really grateful to be safe and, have access to the resources I needed. But it was absolutely a bummer to not be able to, get my degree and like walk down the stage and all of that. A few of my so there were some programs, for example, I was also a student in BU's Honors College. So given that it was a much smaller program, a smaller community, we had like a little Zoom commencement and we all, did our cheers, which was kind of fun because I think in that way, my parents were able to log on and they got to, I guess, virtually meet a lot of my professors in a way that they may not have if they were down at BU during commencement week and during all that craziness, because usually the week leading up to graduation is senior week, where we're all, going to a variety of different like final events and bonding situations and all, and it's honestly craziness. So my commencement was a lot more tranquil than I had anticipated. My family came to help move me out, and there's like a tradition when you graduate that you step on the seal in the center of Boston University's campus, because the legend is if you step on it before you graduate, you won't graduate on time. So the whole tradition is you pop a bottle of champagne on the seal. So I got to do that, which was fun. And who knows if I would have been able to had commencement been normal, because campus would have been way more full with a lot more students trying to get on that seal. So there were a few little silver linings here and there that I'm grateful for. But yeah, I would definitely say if there's any experience that you can't recreate virtually, it's a commencement with over, 30,000 students and family members. Yeah.
And there were so many virtual commencements taking place, and the country tried to put on a graduation for you guys, which is amazing as well. And
Right.
so you have, if you think about, I appreciate you thinking about the positives and talking about the, being grateful and being in gratitude at all times. So there were some things that were positives, and I know you just can't get that experience back. I remember when I graduated my undergrad, I didn't want to march. I was like, yeah, my mom's call. I was like, yeah, no, I don't think I'm gonna go. She's like, oh, you better be at that campus. I was like, really? I have to be there? And with my master's, I didn't. My MBA, I didn't march either. But I know that some people, when I go back for my PhD, I said, I'm definitely, when I finish up the PhD, if we can, I'm going to go and participate and have that experience. But so virtual hugs to you. And thank you for being a good sport and finding a positive in it and being able to communicate that positive, because like I said, the great thing about this podcast is that there's so many people experiencing so many things, and everyone thinks that they're the only one. They're the only one having challenges, and they don't know what resources to go to. They're sometimes people can get a little stuck, and if we can provide some information for people and some inspiration for people from this platform, then I think that we're winning and we're doing a great job. So I appreciate all of you, taking things from the a positive space about your college experiences and what's happening virtual. And because I mean, what do you think, Justin? I don't really hear them like complaining about it. They're just saying, hey, I'm having to adjust, and this is how I'm adjusting.
Yeah, I mean, clearly college life, I think a lot of college students are like, wow, I escaped my parents' house. I get to go be on my own and have some fun. So clearly maybe that part is taken away. And I know from being the DJ and my college years, playing tons of events and clubs during that time, that's something that college students look for. But on the other hand, I think it's preparing them for the future, for this virtual world that we were headed to regardless of COVID. You know, a lot of educational institutions were doing what they could to create a virtual remote learning platform. And this just kind of forced everybody's hand. And it's maybe forcing students who wouldn't be that tech savvy or that good with computers to have to embrace it even more, which is going to make them more valuable in the future, whether they start their own business or if they decide to go out and be an employee.
Right. Well, you know, time just goes by so fast. I mean, we're already at the top of the hour, and I just want to thank everyone who's in our audience who's been listening to Let's Talk About It, #CollegeLife. Tonight's podcast was about the virtual learning space in college. And we had, you know, Professor Justin on with us. We had Jessica Parent on, and we have our college students. But let's do a roundtable and just say how people can reach out to you guys. But before, you know, so let's do two things. One, just give one last tip. If you have one last tip that you can tell everyone about this COVID college virtual life survival, share that, and then just share your platforms of how people can reach you. So why don't we start with you, Justin? I should be saying Professor. Yeah. Go ahead.
That's okay. I feel like, you know, my tip is just to try to embrace the moment and adapt. I mean, at the end of the day, adapting is what makes humans survive. And, you know, just try to embrace what you can and don't fight what you can't control. You know, if things are out of our control, then you can't get stressed out about it. So just try to embrace it, do the best that you can, show up every day. Like I said, get that shower, put on your favorite shirt, your favorite jacket, try to bring your A game, turn on your camera. Make sure you have good sound, make sure your background is clean, not distracting, and, you know, just make the best of it. You know, that's all we can do at this point. And if anybody has any questions or they want to reach out to me, you can hit me up on Instagram. It's, you know, just do a search for Justin Paul. It's _Justin Paul _, or you can hit me at justin@justinpaul.com.
Thank you, Professor Paul. I should have said that from the beginning, but so funny. I remember when I first began to teach on campus, and I would be walking, and people say, Professor Johnson, Professor Johnson. I would have no idea who they're talking to, so I'm just steady walking. Like, Professor Johnson, oh, they're talking to me. So,
I tell my students to call me JP or Justin. You know, it's all good. But thank you, though.
Good. Thank you. Samantha, one last party tip for our audience, and how can they find you, follow you on social media?
I guess a tip that I would say is to find things throughout your day that like make you happy, whether that's like reading a book, being on social media for like a couple minutes, TikTok. I think just finding those little silver linings throughout your day that just break up the day. And I'm on social media, obviously. Instagram, so it's my first name, Samantha, and then a period, and my last name, Rucobo, so it's RUCOBO. And then I'm also on LinkedIn with the same username, and Facebook.
And we need all of our college students on LinkedIn. Get out there. If you're looking for jobs and paid internships right now, if you can't find a job right now, go and get a paid internship. So you need to be on LinkedIn so people can see you and you can connect and build your network. And yeah, one last piece of advice, and how can people find you?
Yeah, I'd say piece of advice I want to just kind of emulate what's already been said, I think, to both Justin and Darius's point earlier. COVID is an opportunity to invest time in things that you've never had the chance to before. So I didn't have to commute, but just not having to run up and down Commonwealth Avenue to my classes gave me the time to cook for myself, learn dance routines. So find new things that kind of make you excited and give you something to look forward to at the end of your day when you're done with your classes that you now have the time and opportunity to do. But that being said, on a more cautious note, I think for college students who sometimes experience caution exhaustion and maybe get a bit sick of being as aware of your surroundings and of yourself as possible, remember that you're engaging and participating in a community broader than just your campus, right? Especially me having gone to school in the city, it was really important that we be mindful of residents in the greater Boston area who are also being impacted by our actions. So always remember that when you're starting to feel a little bit exhausted from exercising such caution. Those are my last pieces of advice. And as to how you can find me, I'm Ina Joseph on all of my social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Like to Joyce's point, LinkedIn is probably the most essential one right now. So definitely find me on LinkedIn at Mara Ina Joseph.
All right, Ina, thank you. Thank you for endorsing my LinkedIn endorsement, because I just think that that's where all of our college students need to be, and work on those profiles. You can tweak them as you go, but especially those of you that are about to graduate. So, Dinero, give us some last parting words here, and how can people find you? Dinero? Uh-oh. He maybe can't. Are you on mute? Can you hear?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, I'm also having some connection issues. But my tip would be to form alliances. No problem is your own. I feel like the best thing you can do is network, find a team of of reliable people who you can help, who can help you. Um, Also look for who you can help and not who can help you. Because oftentimes those will breed much healthier relationships. Um, as being in a situation where we can't interact personally, I think it's very important that we reach out to each other on these social media platforms. If normal colleges have some sort of portal, some sort of network for students to connect with other students. Most college students create a group meet. Definitely reach out and connect to your fellow classmates. That way you can, not only for networking purposes, you never know who you're reaching out to, but
Support
also
system.
for yeah, definitely for the sake of support and understanding potentially how you can get better grades, have better, more creative assignments, and all that. If it's a project, definitely you want to make sure that you're, I think a wise thing would be, wise words were, don't necessarily work on your weaknesses, you should hire them. So work on the things that make you strong, and then network and find people who are good at the things that you're weak at. So I think that that's definitely a good bit of advice that I've had to take to heart. As far as just being able to reach out, step outside of ourselves, even in a time where we're being forced inward, to continue to extend outward and connect with everyone around us, because I think it can breed a much healthier and more successful relationship, both in the classroom and potentially in the business world. Um,
How can
my
people
social
find you on
media.
social?
Say that again.
No, go ahead with your social media.
Oh, my social media is on Instagram. The letter I, am DJ _II. So it's two I's. My Twitter, I'm on Twitter at Denario E, DANARIOE, and I am on LinkedIn with the same username.
And Denario, kudos to you for what you just was saying. I said, boy, he's such a coach's son, right? If you, like I said, I've seen him as a young student athlete. He's such a coach's son, because some of the things he's throwing out there, your dad would be proud. And then, both his parents being business people and entrepreneurs. I know that they have to be extremely proud of you, but he was always someone that I looked at as a student athlete, and just some of the advice and things that you're giving. You're just an old soul, but you probably follow, after you finish your playing career, probably follow your dad and go into coaching or something, because I hear some of the things he saying just was coming out of you. I won't tell him though. I'll keep your secret. I won't tell him you were listening. I'll keep your secret. But again, to everyone, thank you for joining. Let's talk about it. Hashtag College Life Virtual Learning Program. Tonight, I am Joyce Johnson, author, speaker, sales champion coach, and founder of Wise Sales Network. You can, of course, find me on LinkedIn under Joyce Johnson. All of my platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter is I am Joyce Johnson. Thank you for joining. For our students, our audience, I certainly appreciate our panel, I should say. I appreciate you joining the call today. If there's anything I can do to help you personally or professionally, don't hesitate to ask. Make it a great evening. Thank you.